Hello, my name is David Trotter. I'm a board-certified emergency medicine physician. When I was given the theme for this year's TED Talk, I couldn't think of a better example of what a turbulent year that we're going through. Climbing mountains. Whenever I think of someone climbing a mountain, I think about someone that's at the very peak and they have that look of accomplishment, that feeling of triumph. But we all know to get to that peak, you have a journey you have to go through. And my journey started in Detroit. I was born the third out of 4 children to my parents, and we lived on the east side of Detroit on a one-level ranch house. And one of my most vivid childhood memories is when a crazed man jumped through my bedroom window. I shared a room with my older brother, and he was able to pull me off my bed as this guy was jumping through, and we simultaneously yelled, "For Dad! Dad, there's someone in our room!" And my dad came running in, and my father was a large man. He was 6'3", around 300 pounds, and a very formidable looking character. And my guy that was in our room was very short and was frail, and my father went to grab him, and as he was holding him, I thought that was the end of the story. But what we didn't take into account is when that guy had jumped through the window, he suffered all these cuts. So he was bleeding, and he became very slippery for my father, so he was able to break through the grass, burst out my room, and start running through our house. And I remember all of the blood that was just streaked all throughout our walls and on our carpet. And my father was finally able to get to the character, and he was cornering him, and he held him again, and this time he laid down on top of him, and he had extra leverage, and he was able to hold him there until the police came and the threat was over. But when I tell this story, most people believe that I had a really tough upbringing, a really rough childhood. When in actuality, I was extremely fortunate. My father was a family medicine physician and treated some of the most vulnerable patient populations in Detroit. And my mother was a Detroit public school teacher, had her doctorate in education, and taught the younger generation of Detroit. And when I look back at my childhood, I was very happy. I was loved. I was never hungry, and I was never concerned about shelter. So my first real obstacle in my journey didn't happen until my parents decided to move from the inner city of Detroit to a prominent suburb of Detroit. And I was transferred from a very diverse school system to a school system where I was just one out of 2 black male students in my freshman class. I still remember my first day of high school where my history teacher specifically asked me about slavery. And I remember all of my classmates turned towards me and was very eager to hear what I had to say. And I stood up very tall and I said, "Slavery's bad. I would not recommend it." And I realized at that point that I was going to be one of the only black American people my classmates were going to deal with for the next few years. And so I made it a very special agreement to myself that I was going to work very hard and show them that black Americans can do anything, just like any other American could do. And I studied very hard in my courses, and I joined as many extracurricular activities as I could. And by my senior year of high school, I was actually voted senior class president. I was the very first black senior class president my school had ever had, and I was very happy. I was full of all this joy. And I remember I was starting to get my college applications, and one day I went to go visit one of my friends at his house, and I was driving there, and I was pulled over. And the police officer that pulled me over asked for my license and registration, and I didn't think much of it at the time. I gave him the required documents. He went back to the police car, and he came back and handed it back to me, but he didn't say anything. And so I said, "Excuse me, officer, could you please tell me why you pulled me over? You know, I didn't know if I had a broken tail light or if something else was wrong and I didn't want to get pulled over again. And the police officer stopped, he looked straight in my eye, and he said, "You're a suspicious looking character." And he walked away. I still remember how all that joy that I had was instantly corrupted. And it was at a very pivotal time in my life because I was trying to decide where I wanted to go to college. And I decided then that I wanted to go to a place where a lot of people looked just like me. And I applied and I was accepted to a historical black college at Howard University. And I moved to Washington, D.C., and I had a fantastic experience. Education-wise, I was able to excel in all my courses. Socially, I developed lifelong friendships, and I was very happy. I decided I wanted to go into medicine, and I applied to medical school towards the end of my college career, and I was accepted to the University of Maryland Medical School in Baltimore. And I was just thrilled. Now, medical school is very different than anything else. You have to consistently study almost every single day, but I was getting the hang of it. I was doing very well. I was passing all my courses, and in my third year of medical school, I received a phone call late at night from my mother. And she said, "David, you're gonna need to come home." My mother had never asked me to come home before, and I started to tell her that I couldn't come home right now. I was in the middle of medical school, and I had all these courses I still had to do, and my mom said, "No, you don't understand. Your father's very ill, and the doctors don't know if he's gonna make it through the night." I was shocked. I told my mother I'd be on the first flight back to Detroit, and I started to pack my suitcase, and I started to email my professors. And very late at night, I got another phone call, this one from my sister. And my sister was frantic on the phone. And I said, "Hey, can you just tell me, how's Dad?" And my sister said, "Dad's dead." And she hung up the phone. I went to my closet, I pulled out a suit, and I put it in my suitcase. And I remember on my flight back from Baltimore to go to Detroit, I sat on a window seat, and I cried the whole way. Flight attendants and no passengers wanted to get next to me. And when I finally got home, I was with my older brother, and we were just staring at each other. And then we started laughing. Then we started crying, and when all that emotion was finally over, he said, "Do you want to see him?" And I said, "Well, where's he at?" And he said, "Well, he's still at the hospital." And I said, I don't really want to go to a hospital morgue right now. I wasn't really prepared to do that. And he stopped me and he said, "David, Dad's not dead." I had a tremendous amount of emotion that just flowed through me. And the only thing I could muster up was, why didn't anyone call me? Why didn't anyone let me know what was going on? And my older brother went on to explain that my father had got very critical overnight and he needed to be resuscitated. He was now on a ventilator machine, and he had all of these drugs to keep him alive. And all I could take from that is that Dad was alive. And I said, "Take me to him." And I went to his hospital room, and I held his hand, and he couldn't hear me, or at least I don't know if he could hear me, but I said, "Dad, I'm here." And I stayed in Detroit for weeks. I didn't know if I'd go back to medical school, and my mother pulled me aside, and she said, "David, you're gonna need to go back. You need to finish." And I said, "Mom, I'm not really concerned about that right now. I want to stay here with the family." And she said, "David, you know your father would want you to finish. And she was right. And so I went back to the hospital room and I spoke to my father, which would be the last time. I thanked him for everything that he had done for me. And I flew back to Baltimore. A short time after that, I received another phone call that my father had indeed passed away. I flew back to Detroit for the funeral, and I was in a really low place mentally at that time. I didn't know if I could muster up the energy to get back to medical school and finish, and I was just touched by the overwhelming support that my family showed, that all of my friends from elementary school to high school to college, and even my new medical school friends, they really showed me the support that allowed me to dig deep within myself to find the will and the courage to push forward. And I went back to medical school, and I finished. And when I received my diploma, there was this tremendous sense of accomplishment, this tremendous sense of achievement. And I really felt my father's presence right there with me. And my message to you would be this. We all have our own personal mountains. That was my journey I went through. And yes, I'm an emergency medicine physician. I'm married to a beautiful wife with beautiful children. But I still have many goals and many things I wanted to achieve. And I'm still climbing my mountain. Now, for your mountain, you're going to reach a point where you hit an obstacle that you don't know if you can get through. You're going to feel as if you might not make it. And when that happens, never give up. You need to reach deep within yourself. Find that will and that courage to push forward and maneuver through all of those obstacles. Because I promise you, when you reach that peak, you too will feel that same sense of achievement, that same sense of triumph. And you will know that all of that energy, all that time, and all that effort that you put forward to reach that goal was definitely worth it. Good luck in all of your endeavors. Stay safe and be well.